Jessica Dev, and welcome back to another week, another edition of Vihangam Yoga Global Online Forum. I'm Avi, joining you once again this week from Sydney, and today we're going to enter the final part of our conversation with Abhinav ji on the topic of progress and free will. To recap part 2 quickly, it would be two key things that we concluded with last week. The first was that as we dive deeper into these concepts in progress and in free will, we find that the answer to a lot of our questions is being still, being in a state of stillness. And it's through that state that you can decide what you need to do. You can make the right choices in order to progress in the way that you set out to. And the second thing we discussed was what are some ways we can achieve that stillness, with the main discussion being on the practice of Vihangam Yoga meditation and how it can help us achieve that sense of stillness. So today, we're going to wrap up our conversation on the second concept and tying it together with progress. We're going to be looking at free will today with some depth and really see how that overall, how we should use our free will to make the right progress and how they are ultimately connected to each other. So please sit back and enjoy the final part.
Yeah, and what you just mentioned about breathing and refocusing. You know, in today's age, as we hear more and more about things, well, we've heard it in all ages, but today a lot more often we hear about things like emotional intelligence, mental health, you know, taking care of your inner self and being clear in your mind and spirit and all these types of words. You know, I truly believe that just being able to breathe and refocus, you can really alleviate yourself from so many of the struggles that we see here. You know, it's easier said than done, but it can really put us on sort of a more positive path in the right way.
Absolutely.
As you said, being able to breathe and refocus, you're able to understand your own emotions and how you're feeling right now. In that way, you can also understand the energy of the room. How is the other person feeling? And what we're really seeing here, I think, is just the ability that we've been gifted as human beings to be able to read the situation around us and through feeling, and just by breathing and refocusing, we can understand so much more about the world. And one of the most powerful things, well, one of the things that is illustrated to be really powerful in humans is free will. You know, the ability to think by ourselves and to make those decisions by ourselves in whatever it is. And we mentioned at the very start of our conversation about how the fundamental thing to progress seems to be free will. So as we've now discussed into understanding, you know, how we can be still and why it's important in order for us to make progress and to make the right choices, we come down to the main source of any of our actions, which is free will, that choice, the ability to say, okay, I want to do this, let's do this. But the question is, you know, you touched on the issue, or the problem we all have, which is with the mind, that collision of two forces, what we want to do versus the mind deterring us. Why is any of this the case? So why do we have something deterring us? Why have we been given a free will at all? What is the purpose of being able to think for ourselves in comparison to maybe other even species? If we look at the difference between us and animals, often we interpret that we have the ability to think at a higher level, analyze at a higher level, and use our free will to supposedly achieve more. But like, what is the purpose of that free will? Is it just to, you know, continuously evolve our potential as a society to, you know, achieve more automation, more science, technology? It's just growing at a rapid pace in so many different directions. But what really should we be doing with our free will?
Yeah, a very detailed question. And I think it makes a lot of sense because I think it's something that everyone's thinking about in their own capacity and way.
Yeah.
Um, Free will is a very interesting thing. I sometimes wonder if we really do have free will because how many of the things that we do every day are we doing because society tells us? Um, like, am I and are you, are you a student? Are you an engineer? Are you a manager? Are you a leader because you want to be that? Or because society is telling you to do that? So I think it's a very intricate topic. Intricate not because it's complex. I know they're synonyms, but um, not intricate in the sense of it's multi-layered. In that there's social conditioning, socialization, the way we've been brought up, our upbringing. There's just so many facets. But what I would say is the biggest kind of free will that we have is we get to live our life in the way we want to. And by that, what I mean is, there's a great, the international head of Vihangam Yoga. I had the distinct pleasure of speaking with him or receiving his time just a few months ago, I think.
Yeah.
And we were discussing a similar thing, and he conveyed that, free will is one of the biggest banes we have, one of the biggest mistakes or issues that we have to deal with, because it's one of the primary reasons that we don't even align ourselves with nature. We can decide I'm going to get up at 11. I'm going to sleep at 3 a.m. I'm going to do whatever I want. And in a way, yeah, we're very free to do whatever we want. But free will has two parts to it, free and will. And I think the crux of the issue with free will becomes, what is your motivator? What is your will? What is the motivating part of your free will? What are you going to do with it? And again, I think that comes very much down to the way you define your life, the boundaries, the structure. I think it comes down to the way you look at progress, the way you look at what is your ideal day, the principles of which you live your life. I think it's a pretty well-known fact that historically, throughout time, most of our ancient forefathers, foremothers, villages, they all align themselves with nature. And the thing that free will has done for us is we have intelligence as well, which we use with our free will. And it's allowed us to construct these houses by which we build a barrier between ourselves and nature to protect ourselves, to survive. But now we're so far away from nature that we have very little to do with it. In fact, we destroy it. So, who's more intelligent? Is it the bird who knows how to live with nature, or is it the human who destroys nature? It is something that I think about a lot. But I think free will has been given to us so that we can evolve ourselves, so that we can grow ourselves, which I think you touched on as well. And the reason is, if we were just mechanical robots, then there wouldn't be as much space for expansion. There wouldn't be as much space for evolution. But because we have free will, because we can take choices and we can define what choices we're going to take, there is this challenge which we are thrown into in life, where we can look at all the choices we need to take, and based on all of those choices, if we take a certain choice which is more in alignment with the principles in which we want to live our life and the way in which humans should live their lives, then immediately there's a much clearer definition of progress. I don't think the message of spirituality and the message of spiritual philosophy is, we all have to become the same. I think it's just, as you become more subtle, you discover the same principles. And that may lead itself to, people becoming similar in the way they think and act, but you'll never be exactly the same because the way you apply those principles will differ from person to person. So I think free will is there because it challenges us. It is a huge challenge, of course, but it's what we've signed up for as human beings, I think.
Yeah, and yeah, free will, like, it just seems to have so many different dimensions in how we can use it to do so many different things. If we're talking physically, building so many different things, the way we've affected nature, it realistically, it just has a lot of consequences. The way we make decisions with our free will. And this becomes even more varied when we look at the way all of us have different beliefs and morals and the way we've been brought up. And that really affects the way we use our free will and we make decisions from there. So it's really interesting to think about whether it is actually the most powerful thing we have or one of the most concerning things we have, something that might be taking us a little backwards. But ultimately, as you said, I think I really do agree that, the reason why we have a free will is to be able to overcome those things and to be still and to find that right path. So when it comes to the decisions we make then with our free will, and when we're looking at what motivates us as a whole, the motivators, how do we actually determine whether we're using our free will in the right way, we're moving in the right direction? So it all comes down to the same question as before again. How do we know that we're using our free will in the right way to make the right progress?
Yeah. I think that's a matter of being still and being honest with yourself. I don't think people think in terms of free will day to day, and I wouldn't recommend it either.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I think it's, so you have free will. Welcome to the club, I guess. But I think the point is you need to get somewhere. There's a mountain that needs to be climbed, and you're the only one who can assess whether you're climbing the right mountain or whether you're on a hill which is just far away from where you want to be. And like you said, that's a very personal journey. But I think the very human aspect of that journey, which is consistent for everyone, is being able to identify where you are and where you've reached. And I think the best way to do that is being more subtle, being more still, tangibly, because, just saying being still is probably a little bit of a confusing thing, abstract thing. But it's more like, at the end of the day, if before going to bed, you can just, pause for a moment, not have any distractions in your head, and just be able to feel how you are feeling and just reflect on everything that's passed in the last week or month or day. Within that, you'll start to sense, okay, these are the things that I need to work on. These are the things that I've improved on.
Yeah.
And, honestly, I think if you're focused on growth, you won't even notice the things that you've fixed because you're focused on fixing the next thing. And that's actually a very good point to reach, because I think the best thing you can do for yourself is, yes, you should celebrate your wins, but after you've won something, you should forget about it, I think. Because otherwise it's very easy to become overly confident, overly proud, this life is so vast. There's so many things to learn. I think it's better to focus on what's next to learn. After you've, learned something, definitely celebrate, be happy, share it with your loved ones, share it with everyone. But don't get overly excited or overly involved in celebrating, because then you become very overly proud. So, yeah, I think I would say it's best to just focus on what's next. And that in itself will allow you to use your free will in the right way, I think, because the choice you're taking is focused in a certain direction.
Yeah, I think as a whole, our conversation today, what we've really seen now, as we've answered the two key questions we started with, which was about, what is the true meaning of progress and what is the purpose of having a free will? It's all come down to being able to be still, make the right choice, and being sort of almost relentless and just relentless on what's next, being ready to move, keep going. And to conclude then, what would your final reflections be on just the practical way that we can move forward from here? What can we take from our conversation of progress and free will and all of these different concepts we talked about? What is the one main thing you want to communicate about how we can make progress a part of our lives?
Yeah, I think the first thing is not all progress needs to be huge. Not everything has to be a Facebook update, an Instagram photo, a Twitter post worthy thing. The only person that you need to make, happy, the only person that you really need to help find a rhythm is you. And so I think progress and a next step I would suggest to and would like to communicate to everyone is just find something really small. Find something that annoys you about the way you live your life. Whatever it is. Maybe you eat a little too much at dinner. Maybe you forget to brush your hair sometimes. Maybe you don't, clean your desk often enough. I think it's, focus, stillness, all of these things are muscles, and they don't grow overnight. They grow with gentle steps where you decide this is the next thing, this is the next thing, this is the next thing. And eventually you reach a point where your desk is clean, you're eating the right amount of dinner, you're, brushing your hair, and you're reusing that capability you've built within yourself using very small steps in larger scenarios. And I see this play out everywhere in my own industry where, people think that small things don't really matter, but small things matter at scale. I've seen very interesting bugs in our industry where just one character or one line is what you need to fix something that's affecting millions of people who are using your technology. So small things really do matter. So I would say just pick one small thing, which, when you go and you write down in that piece of paper, that blank piece of paper, what is my ideal life? What is my ideal day? Then what is that, one thing that you don't want or to be there anymore? That one habit, or don't even call it a habit, because habits, again, calling something a habit is saying, I do this all the time, and this is part of me. But it's not. It's just something you do. So stop doing it. That's it. So you don't have to overcomplicate. It's not a part of you. you are very much beyond and a lot more important and subtle than the things you do. You are you. So the things you do and who you are related, but you're much more, you're more subtle than the things you do. So, you know, I think, yeah, like just picking one thing that you don't want to do and pick one thing that you do want to do. So, okay, I don't want to go to sleep with a dirty desk, so I'll clean my desk. And one thing that I want to add is before I go to bed, I want to reflect on my day for a minute. Just do two things. Stop doing one thing and start doing one thing. And just within that, you'll build this rhythm where, you know, you start to understand innately within you which direction you want to head in. And, you know, obviously the ultimate direction we're all trying to head in is a direction where we understand ourselves, we understand what happiness is, what joy is, and all of those things can be discovered and understood with the practice of meditation. So if you want a third thing to do, I would say investigate and consider the benefits of meditation, because I can definitely say it changed my life. But putting that aside, the two things I would say are stop doing one thing and start doing one thing.
Yeah, I think that's a lovely summary that we can take some inspiration from, all of us listening today. And as we've talked about these concepts of progress and free will and many other things, many other important concepts, including stillness and the power of meditation and having self-awareness and self-control. I think ultimately, as Abhinavji has concluded for us today, what we should really look to take forward is, you know, just slow everything down for a moment. It's not all just about physical progress and what we're doing physically day to day. We need to ensure that we take a moment to have that reflection. Take a moment to be still and be clear on, okay, but what am I actually doing? And why am I doing it? And through that, I think we can all understand in a much clearer way the direction that we want to head in. And meditation truly does help you in having that stillness, the ability to pause and to make the right decisions. So to conclude, I think what I'd want to say is, yes, in all of the eras that we've existed in as humans, in all the different civilizations, we've constantly looked every day to increase our potential to do particular things. But we can't forget to look in the other direction, inward, because any progress, any advancement that we want to make in our own lives, in the outside world, it all starts on the inside. And it all starts with being still and being able to make the decisions that we really want to make so that we can move in the direction that we truly want to. So thank you, Abhinavji, for joining us for this conversation this week.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm very humbled, and yeah, I'm excited to hear what everyone's journey proceeds along, and I hope everyone got something to think about from this conversation at ours.
Well, folks, that brings us to the end of our complete 3-part conversation on the topic of progress and free will. As we already concluded in our conversation, we've come to understand the two questions we set out with, which was, what really is progress? And what is the purpose of having a free will? And I think, as Abhinavji summarized himself about what we can practically take forward, it's a wonderful exercise to look at our day and find two things that we want to change. You know, one thing that we want to start doing and one thing we want to stop doing. It's these kinds of subtle actions and victories in our own progress that allow us to become stronger and more in control. Ultimately, as we've discussed, progress and free will really are tied to the actions and choices that we make every day as humans. So, We hope that you've been able to take something from these last 3 weeks and this 3-part conversation. And thank you for joining us through this journey. That brings us to the end of this week's edition of Vihangam Yoga Global Online Forum. So thanks for listening, and please take care. Jai Gurudev.